I will struggle to squeeze close to 60 years story, a story that covers 60 years period in less than 20 minutes. I need to make sure I end on time so I can go and study Greek because I'm not ready for the next quiz. So, Keith asked me to talk about Amazing Grace and what it means to me. I have never thought of this topic before, so it was challenging to me. And right now, I'm still figuring out how to say it. I know what to say, but I'm trying to find out how to say it. I'm doing the kind of redaction, a lot of cutting and pasting, because I want to fit that story in a different context, in the American context, so I can speak in a way that will make sense to you. At the same time, I want to struggle with my beautiful accent. Because if I get emotional, I might go into my Cameroonian way, and you'll be saying, what is he talking about? So I need to make sure all those dynamics are in my mind as I tell you this story. The story of what Keith called the Bassay people. You wonder why this is a blurred picture. Because maybe that's the only one I have. Wow. Of the person who is my dad. It looked like Gary Greg. He's not here this morning. It looked like him. And my mom looked a little bit like Susan. So, and this is me. I look the same. This is my elder sister, and this is Suzanne, my kid sister. Yeah. My father is a Nigerian. He was born in a family of 11. 11 siblings, of course. The first one was a girl, and the rest were boys. And in a culture like ours, like theirs, if you have boys and boys and boys, good. Because men are those who control the inheritance, everything that belongs to the family belongs to the men. So having boys is not a problem. Good news. But the first boy died when my father was around 20 years old. 30 years old. The first boy died. Within a year, the second boy died. After less than a year, a little bit more than a year, the third one died. And continuously up till the one next to my father. He died also. My father came from a very wealthy family. They have a lot of, when they say wealthy in this Nigeria, it means you have a lot of lands. So when my father saw the last one die, he left Nigeria, ran to Equatorial Guinea, a country near Cameroon, and stayed there for close to 15 years. So, 10 brothers died within 10 or 11 years. Then he left, and for 15 years, he survived. Left Equatorial Guinea and came to Cameroon. Most of you, maybe me too, we believe in the world we live and everything happening in the world. If you're sick, you pray. If you have a problem, you address. We live in the world we see. And at the same time, we know that if life ends on earth, we know there is heaven, there is God, and there's the interaction with God, and that's why we are here. So most of you live, you navigate between these two, or you live in these two. But thousands, millions of African people don't live only between these two. I mean, they live right here in the middle. We believe in so many things happening here. We believe in witchcraft. We believe that I can kill you and no FBI, CIA investigation will show anything. Because we have powers that we can use to manipulate the spirits. And there are people whose job is to make sure that things are happening in this middle. And my father lived in this middle place. What you can call a medicine man, juju man, a shaman, all those names. That was my father. So when he came to Cameroon to settle there, Then I back up. Let me go to my mom. My mom was married. I had a boy. After a few years, 2 or 3 years, the boy died. And she could not have any more children. In an African community, if you cannot have a child, you are useless as a woman. Thank God things are changing. So the husband took my mom and came and dumped her back in her father's house. And he said, I can't marry, a man can't marry a man. And this is not a woman. So my mom cried all the tears of her eyes. That's all she could do. And generally people don't marry women like that. I mean, once you have been dumped, nobody will marry you again because it is declared that you are useless and you become the shame of your family. So, after some time she became sick and she needed to be cured. So she came to the medicine man, like that. And my dad, I don't know what he did. My dad was fond of saying, exaggerating things. My dad has a way of exaggerating stories. So, but based on what he told me, my mom came, like me. Yeah. So, my mom was killed. And generally when you are sick, you go and live with the medicine man. So my dad saw this beautiful woman, and he said, maybe I can change this story. So he went to my grandpa and said, can I marry your daughter? My grandpa said, no way. No way. Or if you want to marry her, just live with her. Have children. Once you have children, come and do what customs demand. That's how my dad took my mom. And my elder sister was born. 4 years after I was born, in 1974. Then, 4 years after, my kid sister was born. My father was very smart in family planning. My mom had me when she was 40. So she had my kid sister when she was 44. Here you will say very risky. You might begin to think that at this point my mom could smile, that she's a woman now, a proud woman. But remember I told you many things are happening in this middle place. My mom became sick. They were moving from one hospital to the other. No remedy. At that same time, a boy was found in our village, in our neighborhood, who was missing. The boy was missing and they found the boy. And they realized that the boy could speak my father's dialect. So they brought him to our home. And after talking with him, my father knew that, hey, this boy came from my hometown. Remember, he has been away from hometown long time ago. Long time. More than 27, 28 years, something like that. So my father chose to take this 10-year-old boy back to our home, to his hometown. A journey that was supposed to take 3 or 4 days. Remember, my mom is sick. So Dad went to leave this boy home. Again, a lot is happening here. True or not, I'm not trying to prove to you that it's genuine or not. Because it's like going to my village and trying to prove to my grandma what internet is all about. She will never understand. So I'm just trying to give you kind of explanation. My father left this boy in his hometown and was coming back. You travel between Cameroon and Nigeria, you need to use a ship. They have a kind of shipwreck. And my father was declared missing for 3 years. Technically, what they said is that he lost memory. His memories and lived in an island, all this, where nobody knew him. And he came back home when he recovered. But between this time, my mom, again, she cried all the tears of her eyes. My father came, they did what they could do. She remained sick up to She died when I was 12 years old, so 8 years after she died. And I don't know if my mom has ever been happy, except for the few years she had us. But the rest of her life, she has never been really, really happy. So, now that we live in here, I don't know how it happens. I can't tell. But my mom found Christ through somebody in the village. She found Christ. But because she was sick all this while, she wasn't really able to go to church. So, I was going to church on her behalf. It would make sense to you. I don't know how. My dad lived. Most people in Africa live in this world, where the story of Second King, where you are a Christian, but you are also a juju man, a shaman. I mean, I'm doing something in the realm of mystics, magic, but I call God. I say, God, have this power that I'm trying to invoke to work. It is a world full of hypocrisy and stuff like that. You think you are Christian, you are not. You can't be a Christian like that. We know that. You and I know that. But that's the best it could be. At the same time, in places like Cameroon, you have people who believe so much in Ephesians 5, 6 to 11, 11 to 12. I don't know how to interpret. You interpret it. I don't know how you. But here is like, there are forces going on. We do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities. People come, they are possessed. I mean, you see them rolling like in the Bible, and you need to pray to deliver them from all these possessions or whatever. So this is the kind of Christian you see. And the kind of overlap, the navigate between, because sometimes some people who want to do this by outlaws go to the mystic world to gather some power, to come and behave like Christian and cast out demons and stuff like that. This is what Moses had. And this part here was my destiny. To be one of these, because that was the job of my father. He was a shaman. I needed to be somebody to replace him. That's how you have a boy for. So, my father told, my mother was very influential. My father loved the Lord. But how can I be going to church living in this world? So he too will send me to church. So I was going to church on behalf of Toby. So once I go to church, I'm talking about the churches of Christ. When I go to church, as soon as I come back, my father has only one statement. He will say, what was the Sunday school announcement? It sounded as if it was one word, Sunday school announcement. As if it was one word. My father was not learned, he didn't even know how to read his name. So early, I learned to go to church, listen carefully, come back home and tell them what the Bible says. At that same time, I was about 15, 16 already. Missionaries started coming to our areas, and I was gifted in language. Well, that's what I think. So I was able to begin to do translation in the church. French, English, English, French. Then the year I graduated from the high school, I needed to go to the university. There was no money to go to the university. So I needed to go into a professional school. At that same time, a guy in Texas called V.J. Butler proposed to me to go to a preaching school. I went to my dad. In Africa, you don't take decisions without your father. No. I went to my dad. I said, Dad, I need to go to a professional school so I can come out as an engineer or forester. But some guy is asking me to go to a preaching school in Cotonou, in West Africa. What do you say? I'm still surprised of that. My dad said to me, go to the preaching school. People don't make money, and preachers don't make money. I was about to go to a professional school where I would come back and make a lot of money. Then my dad said, go to a preaching school. Remember, I was living in this world, here. Even though I was doing this interpretation, time is moving fast, so let me fast forward. I went to the preaching school in Cotonou, great celebration. I took the plane, I flew from the first time. I came to the Bible school in Cotonou. I was 24 years old. I was smart, I think so. I was in first in class. The The lowest I was making was 96 over 100. Things were so okay until I fell in love with a certain girl. I can't even remember her name. The story started moving around. And I went to my authorities and told them what was happening, that we were kind of living in immoral relationship. The school called me. I can't remember I can still talk about this story because I tried to delete this story from my mind. But after 1 year of school, they handed me a letter of dismissal. I was rejected from the preaching school. I went to become a preacher. And I was dismissed from the preaching school. You know, when people like Patrick, they tell their story, you don't need to hear them. You look at them, you say, this guy has a story. This guy should have an ugly story. You look at people like me, you don't see any ugly story, whereas my story is so ugly. They put me in a plane that was on my 25th birthday. And I landed at the Douala International Airport with nobody to pick me up. Nobody. I became the shame of my father, the shame of my people, the shame of my congregation. For the first time I can remember, I cried. I stood at that airport and I said, where would I go from here? I'm not even sure what to do. Where do I go from here? So the best thing that I could do is look at God and say, this guy up here could not help me. He has rejected me. After all, I knew how to function here. You see, my body have a lot of scarification. Those things, we do them in Africa all the time. This is about protection, those kind of things. I knew how to do all those things. So now I said, maybe this is where I need to go. Then, this guy redeemed me. I used a phone there at the airport. I begged a phone and I called him and he said, I will send someone for you. And I started living in his house. Could not even go back to my own people. I mean, we live in a culture of honor and shame. And we have a way to share. Let me give one instance. I came to church the first Sunday after he took me to his house, we came to church. And they have already sent news that somebody to come and replace me. So they were preparing somebody to fly to go to Cotonou. And an elderly guy, like Professor Barry, came up and he was saying to the guy that you need to go and replace Bassay. And make sure you don't become ashamed like him. You see how he had disgraced us, and make sure you behave accordingly. I mean, I was seated there, he was looking at me and saying, you can't do that in this country because somebody will sue you. And I started working with him. He is a full-time evangelist preacher. He worked about 10 years before I could come into the picture and stay preacher right now. Maybe he might come here the day I graduate because he's very dear to my heart. Then he introduced me to this guy. I was already doing the kind of interpretation and translation. And I started moving with these two guys all over the country. I thought I would never preach again. I started moving these people all over the country. Then this guy, recommended me to the church in Bonnabel. These people knew my story. I wonder why they accepted me to be a preacher in this congregation. I still can't tell. Then, the most surprising is Lena. How did she agree to marry me? Because when I came back, I was 25, something like that. Then, 2 years after, I got married. Well, at least the traditional process before going to the full swing in 2003. But these people you see here have been people who redeemed me and gave my story a different route. The final one is this. Most of you know Christo. He's a shepherd here globally. When I flew to come here, the day I was leaving, to come here, to this preaching school, you know, you look at your story and they say, well, other people look at your story. People look at my story now and they shake their head and they say, God can do more than what people can think about. You live here, so this means nothing to you, but for us living in Cameroon to come here, third world country to a developed country, if you take a plane to come to the US, it's like you are going to heaven. So it's like this guy gave me the ultimate position that somebody could dream of. Before coming here, I already served as a member of the board of trustees. I've already served in many areas. I was kind of main guy in the whole country, master of ceremony. So I was able to go up. And this was kind of like, well, I can't wait to graduate and go out. That's why I cannot graduate and stay here. Because my story, the fulfillment of my story is back home. I had this quote. It's from Cyprian, as we plan to round up. He was a bishop. This was written about the 3rd century. And he said, it is a bad word, the Latin, an incredible bad word. But I've discovered in the midst of it a quiet and good people who have learned the great secret of life. They have found the joy and wisdom which is 1,000 times better than any of the pleasure of our sinful life. They are despised and persecuted, but they are not, but they care not. They are masters of their souls. They have overcome the world. These people in battles are Christians. The lesson I learned in all this is that when after this bitter experience of crying and sorrow, I learned one thing. If you want to be anything in life, be it effective. If you want to claim that you are a Christian, be one of them for real. I could not live between the two. So I had to choose that I am not anymore. I do not have anything to do again with anything that pertains to the middle world. All those witchcraft, all those sorcery, all this practice that makes sense or don't make sense now. I don't know if my mom and my dad will be in heaven. I pray they will be. My mom did not have maybe time to worship, but I know she had a very good heart. I know she was baptized. I know she had the mind to worship. So probably I will see her in that place. My dad lived in this life almost all his life until the very last time, where maybe because he could not do this work anymore, people could not come to him anymore because he was too old, or maybe something else was happening. But I spent the last month of my father spent the last month of his life with me at the hospital. I was taking care of him. And the day he died, I look at him. I was already full-time preacher. I look at him and I said, Dad, I don't know about your faith. Neither faith, F-A-T-E, or faith, F-A-I-T-H. I don't know about it. I don't even know what to say to you. But if you have a heart that can speak to God and denounce this middle class. I don't know what he did because at that point he could not speak anymore. I took him back home because we knew he was going to die. And that evening, he was sleeping before me, and I looked at him. And I spoke to God a kind of the most aggressive prayer of my entire life. As I finished praying, my dad died. I don't know where he's going. What is amazing grace to me, Keith, and you all, I don't know. I don't know. I simply know that God looked at me at a certain point, saw something in me, and brought me here. And in the life of many people, I mean, The 4 years, say, when I stand with Christ on high, looking over life history, then Lord shall I fully know, not till then, how much I owe. I mean, I don't know how much I owe God. I can't even begin to explain my route up to this point. This second one, the four last line also. Make forgiveness feel so sweet, make the Spirit help so me. Even on earth, Lord, make me know something of how much I owe. I just want to be able, right now, to be able to appreciate what God has done. So what is amazing grace? This last time here, being able to look at my life and say, dear God, thank you. Thank you because you gave me a new definition. And my pledge, as I look at amazing grace, is to remain committed to Him. Before I traveled here, the only person I know in my father's side, the only person. Remember, because of this story, I've never gone to Nigeria. I went one time, and that was for a conference, Bible conference. I've never gone to where my father came from. I only know one guy from my father's family. That is the son of their elder sister. Maybe that's the only person we will know. He lived in Cameroon and got married to a Cameroonian also. A year before I could come, he was sick and he was at the hospital. He needed to save him. And I went to him. Now, as we were talking on his dying bed, this is what he told me. You see this chain and this chain here? He said, Louis, why you never coming, Bassay? You broke the curse. C-U-R-S. He said, you broke the curse. That was in our family. You are kind of the only first person we can call Christian in our family. And you should never forget that. I'm sure I will never forget that. God bless you.
Tomorrow, Brother Dan Williams will be with us. He's works with church relations, and also I'm in one of his counseling classes. And I just asked him to share his perspective with us tomorrow, so be here.
We have any